Okay. We are currently live. Hey, Delasia, what's up? We're gonna hold off on to see if more people can come in, and then Zakkiyyah will be joining the live. Yeah, Delasia, you are first. Um, so yeah, hi everyone. My name is Darryl. I am the creator of MOCA.IG. This is truly a passion project of mine. Sorry if I look crazy. Miss Corona has me out here looking wild. I'm also in the midst of moving homes. If you can hear me, let me know if you can hear me. You don't hear anything? If you can hear me, please, give me a thumbs up. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so as I said, I am now waiting for Zakkiyyah to join us. I just got off the phone with her, letting her know that we were going live. This conversation will be about an hour. That's like maxing it. Really hoping that, Instagram doesn't do us bogus and just kick us out. But just a quick introduction. Today we are talking to Chicago-based multimedia artist Zakkiyyah Najeebah. Oh, she is here. How do you add her? Let's see if I can add her. Oh, I can. Enable to join. People, give me 1 second. I'm just waiting to see if it'll let me add Zakkiyyah in. Zakkiyyah, if you are in, please let me know. Oh, there we go. I just got the I got a request from someone who's not Zakkiyyah. There we go. Okay, you here. Yay.
Hi. I'm so sorry I'm late. I was trying to do it from an iPad, but for some reason it wasn't working.
Gotcha.
It was being weird, and I'm not the most tech savvy person, as you know. I'm somebody's auntie when it comes to technology. So I didn't know what was going on.
Oh, fine. Thank you for taking time out tonight. I know, we're in the midst of Miss COVID and she's keeping us all in the house, but still somewhat occupied at the same time. I feel like a lot of creatives are using this time as I feel like a lot of creatives are using this time as like an in-home residency, which I think is smart.
Yeah, I guess it would be an at-home residency, but I think for me it's been more of I don't know. I've had time to just sit with myself and sort of sit with my own personal and professional challenges and artistic challenges. So, yeah, Miss Rona has been getting a lot of us together. I will definitely say.
Okay, so for the people who are currently in the live watching, and I would like for you to introduce yourself. I feel like I introduced you, but I know you could introduce yourself in a more thorough way.
Sorry, I'm so shy on this live. This is so weird.
Don't be shy.
So I'm Zakkiyyah Najeebah. I'm an artist. I'm a visual artist. I'm also a curator, independent curator. I'm an educator, and I'm also the co-founder alongside D. Jordan Williams of Concerned Black Image Makers.
Woo woo. Okay, cool.
You should introduce yourself as well, Darryl. I mean, this is your platform.
True. Okay, so I'll reintroduce myself because I did introduce myself when there was only one person here. My name is Darryl D'Angelo Terrell. I'm Detroit-based artist. People are calling me. and I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. But yeah, so yeah, my name is Darryl D'Angelo Terrell. I am a Detroit-based curator, artist, organizer, recent Red Bull House of Art resident. However, it's been postponed due to Miss Corona. I'm also the creator of MOCA.IG. MOCA.IG is a passion project of mine. It stems from the idea or the interest in wanting to curate for institutions moving and told I did not have enough experience. So I was like, you know what, forget that. I'm gonna form my own experience, or my own based digital institution where I allow myself to curate artists of color, predominantly Black and brown artists. So yeah. All right. So let's get into you. I think my first time meeting you, we were at an artist talk at the Art Institute of Chicago. This was like in 2016, 2017. It was Thelma Golden, Colleen Smith, Glenn Ligon, and they were speaking. It was I forget.
Lynette Yodom Boache. Was that the
yes,
yes. Lynette Yodom Boache?
Yes.
Okay, I remember that day. Yes.
That's my first meeting. I was pretty emotional because it was like 4 artists who I highly admire in one space speaking about their art, and I was just like, oh my God, right? But I was introduced to you, and then me being the creep that I am, I instantly went home and Googled you. Because whenever I meet a fellow Black artist, Black queer artist, I instantly go into like, oh, what are they about? What do they do? Stumbled across your website. And during that time, I think the work that was on your website was We the Vanguard. And then there was like these like digital collages or digital renderings of like architecture. Would you mind like talking about your experience with architecture? I think it's titled A Collection of Contemporary Modern Homes on your website.
Yeah, so that was a really interesting time because I started that project in, I want to say like around 2015, 2016. I was having conversations with my uncle about my grandfather. And my grandfather was the first licensed Black architect to have a firm here in Chicago. And I think I kind of went into this rabbit hole where I became obsessed with his story and his legacy. And I was just really fascinated by it.
Uh-huh.
It was also a very personal project because it was the first project that I had worked on that dealt with my family, for one. Also that dealt with my biological family. For people who know me on a more intimate level, a lot of folks know that I'm adopted. So that kind of added another, I think, layer of, I don't know, intention. I was very thirsty to start that project. And it was a curator actually who's based here in Chicago, Lakeisha Leak, who asked me to do a solo show of work. And that was the work that I showed for that project. And a collection of contemporary and modern homes was a book that he self-published, or a project that he self-published about his own understandings of one contemporary architecture at that time. And that was around, I would want to say like the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were a lot of sort of leftover design principles within that book from the Bauhaus. So there was a lot of Bauhaus involved, and I just became obsessed with it aesthetically, but I was also interested in it because of a personal history, and there was a personal investment in the story. And so within that process, as a way to not only work through questions that I had about my own family or to work through the architectural renderings,
Mm-hmm.
I decided to make digital collages using his work, but then I also took some of the narratives that he created about these homes and did sort of a redaction project where I wanted to create these very sort of intricate and articulate stories around his ideas of, one, you know, what is a home? What does that have to do with class? What does that have to do with proximity to resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just very sort of enamored by it. And there were these interesting moments in these stories that he created where he talks about these people who have like, there's private pools designed in the plan, there's tennis courts. And I'm like, who is playing on these tennis courts? I'm thinking about Black people. I'm like, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, like how many of us had that type of luxury and that type of privacy in terms of a home? So I became invested kind of like in the politics of that. And so that's kind of where that project started.
Okay.
And then the project, We the Vanguard, that was a project I started that was about my own admiration and curiosity around Black women here in Chicago who are arts workers, cultural workers, curators, and artists. I was thinking a lot about how my first experiences actually within the art world were navigated and supported by Black women. Mm-hmm. Right. So I know a lot of, I hear a lot of people talk about, and this is also a privilege, I hear a lot of people talk about how they don't have mentors that are Black when they first enter into the art world, or they don't have mentors of color, or whatever that looks like for you. But a lot of my pathway and the ways that I was able to navigate into the art world and to learn about curating, to learn about a variety of things, I learned through other Black women. And so that was a project that I started to honor that, but to also reveal to the world, like, this is the type of world that I live in. Like, I exist in a world where Black women have all of these multi-dimensional lives where they are curators, they're arts workers, they're cultural workers, they're activists, they're educators. So that's kind of where that project started. I was thinking a lot about the people here in Chicago that I saw kind of at the vanguard of a lot of the projects and things that we now have access to. Like, there's a lot of women who put in a lot of work to make sure that, people like us are getting into shows, that folks are getting mentored, that there are people that are supporting their work, whether it's on a personal level, professional level, curatorially, or whether they're just offering feedback or criticism. And that was the root of that.
Okay, yeah, I know. When I originally saw this this series, We the Vanguard, as a baby Chicagoan during the time, because I had just moved there, I saw so many images of women who I had like ran into briefly, right? And then my introduction into Chicago's arts community, cultural community, was Black women. It was I think my very first studio visit was with Alexandra Rebu, who was like the second person.
Shout out Alexandria.
I
there.
stand her so much, but she was the first person I had a studio visit with, and this was like probably like after my first month being in Chicago in grad school, and she was just like, "Yo, you're making really good work," and I was just like, "Oh my God, like this Black woman is affirming me in an art space," because like in Detroit prior to like more current times, I didn't really get the opportunity or chance to meet or work with or like converse with Black women in the arts, because like I honestly didn't know that many. They weren't as visible as they are now. But that's something I can say about Chicago, is that Black women run Chicago. Specifically.
No, seriously. Seriously.
I love it. It makes me. It's one of the reasons why, like whenever I'm down and out, I'm like, damn, I want to go back to Chicago. It's just like it feels home. It feels like home. It's a very nurturing space, especially for Black artists, especially for Black queer artists, especially for like non-binary people, femme people. Creatives or people who are interested in building a creative practice, which I really do enjoy.
And another thing I think that is, I don't know if this is just unique to Chicago or if it's like a Midwest thing, but I also feel like artists in Chicago are truly invested in the work.
Definitely.
Like, they're truly invested in the work. They're truly invested in community. And it's not, I'm not trying to knock folks on the East Coast or like people on the West Coast, but I feel like here people work collaboratively and they work on projects because it's what they want to do. Like, it's not about, I feel like here in Chicago, talking about art amongst other artists and their artist experiences, it's not about like gallery representation. It's not about a lot of name dropping. My experience has been that people here in Chicago, people build coalitions and people build collectives and they work together. And the work is very much intertwined within the politics of the city, the geography of the city, the queer communities that you mentioned of the city. So then it really becomes more about, like I was saying, becomes more about community. Like, it's not, I don't know. It's just it's a different experience than what I've experienced in other cities. Definitely. And how artists, you know, talk about their practice in other cities.
Yeah. Now, you brought up collectives, so I'm just going to skip straight to concerned Black image makers. We're going to come back to your practice, but since you as a member of this collective, would you care to like talk about your G. Jordan's thought process and like why did you feel that like forming concerned Black image makers to be important right now?
Did you say important right now? I'm sorry, it like broke up a little bit.
Oh yeah, like can you explain why you found concerned Black image makers to be important for Black artists, for specifically Black lesbian artists in Chicago, but now Midwest, I'm no longer in Chicago.
Yeah, so it began like most things through a series of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I met G. Jordan. I want to say we met in it had to have been 2015. This is a weird correlation, but Rihanna's Anti album, that was 2015.
That was 2015, if I'm correct, yeah.
Okay. So, because I vividly remember when we met, we had all listened to that album. So anyways, we met at the home of someone in Chicago who is a Black art collector. And
was it Patrick McCoy?
It's Rob Welch.
Okay.
So they're like a Bronzeville art collector. And like there were just a bunch of us kind of in the space at the same time. And me and G. Jordan kind of met by chance. So from that point, we had this continuous conversation for several years just about our concerns about the state of Black art, Black images, photography, and we decided that this should be something that should be a little bit more formal. I'm like, what would it be like if we invited other people in? Like, there's other photographers or other Black lens-based artists in the city who need a space to discuss their work amongst themselves. Right. And it was also a means of discussing our work amongst ourselves outside of institutional spaces or outside of spaces where there was a white gaze. We really kind of wanted it to be insular within the Black experience and within a Black context. And so that was really, really important to us. Mm-hmm. And so that was why we started it. So a lot of our mission is really about supporting and uplifting Black lens-based artists who really value making images, making specifically Black images. However that looks to you, I know there's this constant conflict between like what Black art is. We could go on about that all day.
Right.
But if you are a Black lens-based artist and you are making work, whether that's film, photography, whatever that looks like, we are open to having conversations. And we also curated a show that you were in last summer at the Washington Park Arts Incubator. That was kind of our first collective group show.
Okay. I remember.
If you all are interested in learning about concerned Black image makers, we are working on a website. And please feel free to reach out with any questions, or if you have questions, drop them into the comments.
Yeah. Now, I think it's interesting that you formed this collective. So in my last year in Chicago, I came across this. I was like doing some commission work for the Rewrite Library in Humboldt Park, which is like this really cute community-based library, and they had a photo book of a collective. It was the Chicago Alliance of African American Photographers.
Yeah,
and they, yeah, so they had a book, and I had never in my life heard of this collective, which I think is crazy. As a young Black photographer, me not really knowing of like Black photo or lens-based collectives. Like I know of Black collectives, like we have Afro Cobra, which was a collective. You know, we have all of the artists who formed Southside Community Arts Center, which also is funny because like a lot of these Black collectives were formed in Chicago.
And so, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, there was also the Camoin collective up in New York.
Okay, yep, I just found, like, I'm really typing it in, they just popped up. But no, I'm just, like, specifically just thinking about, like, art, like, Black art collectives in Chicago, and which makes me always think of how community-driven Chicago's art scene is.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And also the year that we formed Concerned Black Image Makers, I want to say this may have been I want to say 2016. Mm-hmm. There was a huge exhibition at the Chicago Cultural Center about the Wall of Respect.
Yes, that show was so good.
Yeah, so I was reading through that book that came out, and that also kind of was helping facilitate our politics around building a collective, and not wanting to sort of become these artists that are like so individually driven. Because I think a lot of times we're stronger when we work in collectives, and it also helps to have critiques and people in your community who are going to affirm you and support the work, but also challenge the work at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's get back to your specific practice. 2018, I curated an exhibition called O Maker.
Yes, I remember that.
Because you do not know this, but your film Deliberately is what influenced me to curate this show. So I actually curated
the show. You're so generous for calling it a film.
Huh?
I said that is very generous of you to call it a film.
I mean, I mean, for one, it's 15 minutes long. It's a montage film of Black womanhood, of Black femininity. And it was something, when I saw it, I was like, wow, like, why? This was also around the time when I had like really got deep into Jen and Kuru's Rebirth is Necessary film that she did through Nowness and Rebirth. Girl, that film alone has put me in tears way too many damn times.
But also, I think I brought this up to someone else. I feel like for Black visual artists, like when I think about Black visual making, and I don't want to necessarily call it filmmaking. I think some of it it's definitely within the genre of filmmaking, but there's so much video montage. There's like video montage, video collage that is happening within the Black arts consciousness right now. Like a lot of people are working with made footage and combining it with archival footage and making these very interesting video collages. And it's becoming more potent. I think we're almost kind of at the height of it, because I think about people like Jen and Kuru, or you think about someone like Arthur Jaffa or Jatavia Gary. Like there's all of these different artists that are sort of, they're navigating their own sort of language within these processes. But around the time that I made Deliberately, I want to say, was that 2017?
Mm-hmm. 2017. Yeah, according to your website, it was 2017.
2017. I worked on that at an artist residency that I did when I was in Maine, because I had collected all of this footage and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Mm-hmm. So that's when I decided to kind of work on that. But also, I think it's really interesting that we are in a moment, again, where you have a lot of Black artists in particular that are using maybe not similar techniques, right? But that are using sort of similar aesthetic practices or playing around with, you know, eras. You know, I see a lot of people going back to that moment in the 60s when Black folks were doing a lot of the things that we were talking about.
Right. And I don't know, I can definitely say with me really looking at a lot of contemporary Black filmmakers or Black movie image makers, yeah, the video collages is so prevalent right now. I know Khalil Joseph just is doing one called Black News that I really want to see. So, like, it's ridiculous. Okay, so
shout out Black News.
I've been reading all of the like reviews about it. I actually went on a rant on Twitter about how I went on a rant on Twitter pretty much begging some of these artists to start sending some of their stuff to Detroit institutions so we can be able to have access to it as well, for us to be able to see it, because like Detroit being one of the blackest, like literally statistically being the blackest city in the country, a lot of our exhibitions center whiteness in Detroit. Granted, we have Taylor Renee Aldridge, who's here in Detroit, who curates amazing things, and she works for the Detroit Institute of Art for a few years. And then we had Larry Mensah, who was the chief curator at Museum of Contemporary Art for about a year and a half. And then after him, we got Joe Valin, who's currently there. But prior to all of them, like, growing up, I've always felt like exhibitions in Detroit were very white-centered and did not reflect the community. So I don't know where I'm going with that, so I'll just shut up.
No, but that is interesting. I mean, as far as Detroit, like, are there any, like, what is the Black arts community like in Detroit? I mean, I've only been to Detroit a few times, but I don't know a lot about what that community looks like or the specific concerns are.
So it's gradually growing. I would say prior to me moving to Chicago in 2015, I definitely saw a seed being planted and growing. Specifically for like people who were like in my age demographic, so people who were in their 20s. So there were spaces like Baltimore Gallery that was giving a lot of artists, a lot of young artists who had never shown before, this opportunity to have exhibitions, to have solo shows, to do programming. But also they did mics there. They did all of these things, which it started to foster a community. In which I feel like with the closing of that gallery was honestly just like, it was a major hit for Detroit, for young Black artists in Detroit, because so many of us kind of relied on that space. But I also feel that with that space being closed down, now a lot of us have this fire under our ass for us to start opening spaces. So I'm definitely starting to see that a lot of artists are starting to make more challenging work, which I'm really excited about. A lot of the galleries that are here, that are like DIY spots or artist rent spots, are starting to actually tap local artists instead of only tapping artists from out of town, which is cool. We're finally getting this opportunity in our own front's backyard, you know? But yeah, no, like I always, like, within my curating practice, I'm interested in building this bridge between Chicago's art community and Detroit art community, right? So like an art community that is very much established, that has like some of the art world's biggest heavy hitters, right? Like Dawood Bey is there, Carrie James Marshall is there, LaToya Ruby Frazier is there when she wants to be. Right?
When she wants to be, oh my God.
When emphasis, when she wants to be, not when she's supposed to be teaching at SAIC, but when she wants to be. I digress. But yeah, I'm like, that's something I've always been interested in, which is why like whenever I do curate, I always, like, if I'm curating in Detroit, I try to curate some Chicago artists over here, because hopefully what would happen is, for one, we're only a 4 or 5 hour drive away, so like if I am able to like do some programming with artist talks or programming, other type of programming, I can hopefully get artists from Chicago to come to Detroit or vice versa. But and speaking of exhibitions, you had an exhibition that was at Donna's in 2018 or 2019?
I want to say that was it was like 2018 going into 2019.
Okay.
If that sounds correct.
So, within this exhibition, you had a series of somewhat candid portraits of some of your femme-identifying friends.
Yes.
It was gentle. It was really gentle. It was really intimate. And I think what added to it being so gentle and it being so intimate was that, if I'm correct, all of these photos were either taken on Polaroids or taken on like a film point and shoot. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, you can tell by the posture of the women or the femmes you were or the femmes you were taking photos of, they were comfortable. Like, they were able to let their guard down. They were able to like really, I could tell like the conversations weren't even like, okay, I'm gonna take your picture. I could tell the conversation was like, hey, what's up, girl? What's good? What's popping? You got some wine?
Some of them were what's popping, and some of them were like, what's not popping.
Okay.
You know, and I think that was the most interesting thing, was to hear people sort of open up about things that were very affirming, or, you know, moments in their life where they've experienced joy or pleasure, mm-hmm. or where they've seen things come into fruition. Mm-hmm. But it was also, people shared with me things that were also very dark too.
Okay.
And so I always want to sort of challenge my relationship with people when I photograph them, in the sense that one of the things I hate, which is why I really, really hate freelance photography or work that is commissioned. Not that I won't take commissioned work. Hey, y'all, I'm here for hire. But one of the things that can be very frustrating about it is there's this quick kind of like, you get in and then you get out. You take the image and then you leave, and then there's like nothing exchanged. Mm-hmm. I like to work very slowly with people. And so within that project, I'm actually continuing it. Okay. But I really prefer to work very slowly with people and have conversations first. And that could last anywhere from like an hour to however long that is, or however long that person wants it to be. Mm-hmm. And then I decide to take the image once there has been conversation and connection, or some sort of intimacy or trust that's built within that process.
Gotcha.
If it's candid, the trust is kind of already exchanged, because those are more intimate shots of like my close circle of friends. So that's a little bit different, but going into someone's home, that's a very generous thing for someone to allow you into their home, into their private space. Mm-hmm. And I never want to go into someone's home, into their private space, into the intimate space, and have it feel like it's this weird transaction where it's like, okay, I'm here, I'm going to take your image, and then I'm out.
Right.
Like, no, I might be here for a few hours, okay? Like, talking and having conversation and kind of building some sort of trust within that moment. And I'm really I'm more interested in what happens within that moment before the image is actually made, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah. And so those are the things that I feel that sort of remain. And I didn't know if people would understand that or not, or looking at the images, because I think right now, and I think we had this conversation with a group of people earlier, but because we're in this moment of representation, there's an eagerness for images of Black people. Like, people want, like, it's like the craving and the thirst for Black images and Black representation right now is borderline grotesque.
Yeah.
And yes, I love Black representation like the next person, but it's gotten to a point where images can be read very simply, and images can be read very much on a superficial level, or someone could be making the image to make a beautiful Black image. Right. But my intent when I put this image out into the world is that I want people to
is that enough? Yeah.
Like, they can read these images and like they belong to these images, especially Black femme identifying folks or Black folks that identify as Black women. I want that intimacy. I want that sense of belonging to be felt. Like when you look at it, I want this feeling of like, oh, I know that place, or I've been to that place, or I felt that place, or I know that gaze. Like the gaze is very much about our gaze upon each other. And I think as a young Black artist, and young Black artists fall into this a lot, and I think Rashayla Marie Brown put it very perfect a few years ago, where she wrote about how a lot of Black artists, a lot of us get sucked into over politicizing our work, or we feel that our work has to be a direct reaction to the white gaze. And there's times where that can be productive, but I also think there's times where in my own personal practice, I feel like it's more productive to center our gaze, or I want to center my own Black gaze and have that exchange with someone else. Like, I'm not thinking about the outside world. I'm not thinking about white people looking at my art. I'm not thinking about other people and what their interpretation of it is going to be. I'm thinking about what is my relationship with the people I'm photographing in this moment, and how are we gazing upon each other, and what happens if I just happen to document that gaze? Like what is being exchanged within that space? And I think that's one of the things I've become concerned about within a portrait practice, if we're talking about people or making images with people.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, because we were definitely on Zoom for like 3 hours earlier today, speaking about like how the consumption of Blackness is like so heavily desired that creatives, I'm not gonna bite my tongue, filmmakers, specifically people like Lena Wyatt, like how she had wrote and produced Queen and Slim in 1 year, with this interest of just getting it out there, but not really thinking about how it made the collective Black experience feel, right? Ooh, Jesus, that film still stresses me the fuck out.
And it's the urgency, but it's also, I think, what the consumption has created is like this urgency for Black artists to make work as quickly as possible. Yeah. It's like you want to make the work as fast as possible. You want it to be so visible and you want people to see it. But I think there's something to be said about, I mean, slowness is beautiful. Slowness can be very beautiful. And I think when you work with intention, all of that other shit that's like on the outside, like whatever is happening in the institutions and the art worlds, all of that shit just goes out the window. And I think that a lot of it is very much dictated by the market and by, you know, people wanting to consume this so much. And so when you work without slowness, then you're rushing, you're making things without intention. You're like, oh, I'm going to shoot this movie and I want to put it out in the same year.
It's like,
where's the care? Where's the care?
Where's the tenderness?
Where is the slowness? Where is the thought? First of all, where is the political and critical education? I'm really trying to figure it out. And it's not just people who are famous. I mean, we see this within our own communities, right? And so it's people kind of pumping out, and I think that's where representation almost become a burden. Where we see people pumping out this content, and, you know, because of so many reasons that we can get into, you know, we're also eager to see it ourselves. But then what gets lost within that, I think, is a lot of care and a lot of attention to not only the craft, but also the actual like quality of the work. Like the actual quality of it gets lost. Yeah.
Ooh, I'm loving that we're getting a lot of responses on this conversation right now. This is great.
I want to work on something for the next, I want to work on something for the next, like, I don't know, 10, 15 years. Yeah. Like, I've really been thinking about that critically, especially during the quarantine. Like, how can I work slowly, but with intention?
Definitely. Keyword, intention. So, and then, like, when I'm still thinking about the exhibition that you had at at Donna's. Me and you had a conversation, and you were interested in recording yourself dancing with fat and fine people, right? I don't, because you could be working on it really slowly with intention. How, like, has that started? How's it going? What are your feelings around it? Yeah.
So that actually hasn't started.
Mm-hmm.
That project is actually a project that I wanted to activate at the Hyde Park Arts Center for my residency. And as a lot of you know, our residencies have been cut short.
Yeah.
If you are in an institutional residency. And so I would love to start that back up again. And I've been thinking about possibly maybe doing it in a virtual way. I don't know what that would look like.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like, I really prefer the closeness and the intimacy. And so I don't know, that might be able to happen post quarantine, but we'll see.
Gotcha.
But in my dream world, it is going to happen.
Gotcha. So I'm gonna add a few more questions for you, and then anyone who wants to ask questions, who's currently listening or watching, please start submitting your questions. So you had an exhibition that was at Block Gallery earlier, like late last year, early this year. We cannot be comprehended except by our permission. I am so sad that I didn't get a chance to see this exhibition, for one. Like, I am devastated. I kid you not, I was trying to drive my car up there, but I had just driven up there a few months prior.
You know what? I think I remember you telling me that you were going to drive up here for the opening.
I think I couldn't get off work or something, and I was so mad. But for those of us who was not able to see that exhibition or that work, and like, the work is currently not on your website yet. I'm not sure if you'll ever put on it. You might just want to be seen in a physical space. Can you talk us through that exhibition, that work, that process to get that work done?
Yeah, so that was the exhibit had been planned about a year ago. Before it opened, and at that point I was working through new, I would say, like, not really new, but collected found images and videos that I just kind of had stored away, and I had audio that was left over from a different kind of love story where I interviewed people about how they care for themselves, how they view themselves as Black women in this world. I had some interviews on there, some audio that I had used from conversations that I had with Black lesbians here in Chicago. And so all of that was sort of formulated as a way to share how I worked through my practice. And so a lot of what was on display, there was a wall of research material referencing various books and written material and visual material. There was a lot of visual material referencing hands. Anyone, like, who's in close proximity knows that I have an obsession with hands. So I'm just really fascinated, like, hands as sites of, like, touch, pleasure, sensory experiences, trauma, pain, all those things. So there were a lot of references to kind of like the touch of the hand, or the act of, like, using your hand to transmit energy into something. And so I had a video projection, which I can actually share on my Instagram. I might share that soon. There was a video projection that I had of a very slow moving, I would say, I don't want to call it a conversation, but one of my really close friends, Ruth, was talking about her experience working with CPS, and she was talking, like, very fast, and her hands were just moving very fast, you know, as we do when we talk. And I had saved on to that video for years, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. But I was thinking a lot about the slowness of hands. I was thinking a lot about the moments where Black women are sharing these moments of, like, communication. I was interested in what that was like in terms of, like, rhythm, what it was like visually. Also thinking about that what it would be like to exist within that space and in what context. And so I paired it with audio about Black women talking about what it was like to love another Black woman.
Gotcha.
There was also audio from my mom leaving voicemail messages on my phone and saying that she loves me and that she wants to hear my voice and that she wants to talk to me. So it was sort of this really interesting meditation on Black women that are directly involved in my life, but I was also thinking a lot about how I could express it in a much more poetic way that was very soft and gentle.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the show was about softness and gentleness, but also understanding that it's through our own comprehension of self, whether that's individually or collectively, that we're able to kind of, I guess, move forward or move beyond. If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense.
Like all over the place. Yeah, I was thinking, honestly, it was about love. Like, I think, and not to sound corny, and I know a lot of people say that, but I also had some pieces in there where I had handwritten, repeatedly handwritten messages that Black women had texted to me, but I hand wrote them on large 4 feet by 5 foot sheets of paper.
Oh, that's big.
Yeah, it took a long ass time. Listen, honey, I was going through it working on those, okay? Listen, I was going through it. But those pieces were also my own personal love letter to the women in my life. And it was a literal love letter. And I wanted to put my body into it. I wanted to put my spirit into it. And I wanted to put my actual hand into it. And so this is going back to the idea of like hands. I've just been really interested in handwork. And I also had a set of 35 millimeter Kodak slides on a slide projector where I had put my fingerprints onto the film.
Okay. So it's a lot of labor. Like
it was a lot.
I think that's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. And it's also a great way to talk about love because love and to love someone is a labor, you know? Yes, Zakkiyyah. Yes.
And I'm just interested in love work. I mean, I think that there are a lot of concerns that we do have as Black people that are very real and very urgent. But I also want to make work that is very much about belonging and desire and pleasure and love and have that come from a space that is universally human. Of course, the Black just runs through everything, but I'm really sort of interested in the emotions or in the emotional labor that exists within our community and how that is highlighted through love or care or intimacy, desire, belonging.
Got you. Thank you so much. Okay. So we have a question. I like the fact that Instagram gives us this opportunity to
I can't see the question.
I'm about to pop it up.
Can you only see the questions?
Can you see it now? Can you see it?
Okay, so it says, who are the organizations that are being innovative in their approach to this shift? So Denise, can you clarify what you mean by this shift? Like what shift exactly?
Yeah.
I want to be able to answer the question.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if I can remember at what time in this talk that she asked that question. I don't see it.
Hi, Jared.
There's a lot of people in here, which is exciting. And I'm also, I think I'm getting the sign that Instagram is going to kick us off in a few minutes.
No!
They do not play about this time limit at all.
But wait, so I'm trying to figure out this question, organizations that are being innovative in their approach to the shift. I wonder if they mean shift in the art world or shift in political concerns. I'm not sure.
Okay, so we're gonna go to the next question, and then
Denise, I'll text you.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. How are you thinking about Black love without falling into the trap of romance?
Yes, let's talk about it. Okay, so I love this question because one of the images that I created that helped kick off this series was an image of both my friends, Crystal and Ruth. We were sitting somewhere and they were holding hands together. And they are not in a romantic partnership whatsoever.
Is this the image like they're like one has their arm over the other?
Yes, and they're locked hands.
I love it's the first image. Yes, it's the first image on that page of your website.
Speaking of not falling into the trap of romance, I think that image for me is what solidified a lot of my I would say not understanding, but observations. It really strengthened my observation of intimacy, care, and Black love that could exist through friendship, but in a way that is very intimate and in a way that is very I would say personal and enacted through both the people that are involved, because in that moment, I don't know exactly what they were talking about. I don't know necessarily what sort of emotions were transferred, but you could see that they were having a connection where they were completely involved amongst each other in that moment in time. And I was really sort of obsessed with this idea of thinking about how is intimacy and love practiced in a way that isn't romantic? How am I, when I am around my friends, there's certain conversations, whether that's, you know, verbal conversations, conversations happening through our bodies, conversations happening through emotion that could also happen in romantic relationships, but are also very much platonic and about care and trust within that moment. So I hope that answered your question, Jared. Although I do love Black women, I'm also interested in how Black folks just love on each other in general.
Yeah, I love that Jared added a comment.
That's a great question.
Romance equals capitalist courtship.
And there are so many things that are very romantic that have nothing to do with quote unquote romance.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one last question. It's from D'Angelo. I think this is like the perfect question to end off on. Is there a way that we can support you during this time?
Ooh, child.
Girl, go ahead. Drop your cash.
Y'all want to pay for my therapy sessions? No, I'm just kidding. Support looks different ways. I would say one of the ways that I'm looking for support as an artist is critique. If I'm being very transparent, I think I was talking to you or someone else about this recently, but I feel like a lot of the times we get into these communities and we get in these modes where everyone is just kind of like praising each other, and you know, we're all like, I stand you, I stand this person, I stand so and so. But I think right now the best way that someone could support my practice is by giving me thoughtful and constructive critique and feedback.
Yep.
Something that I'm always looking for and find extremely helpful. I would say, yeah, that's the thing I can think of right now. I'm not really looking for, I mean, if y'all do want to donate to my artist practice, DM me, hit me up. I will definitely send my Venmo,
right.
PayPal, Cash App, and Zelly.
Alrighty. Zakkiyyah, thank you. This has been great.
Thank you, Darryl.
For all the people who are here, I hope you are all safe at home, staying away from Miss Corona, because we don't want her. We don't need her. She needs to disappear. So Zakkiyyah will be the artist doing a takeover for MOCA.IG for the next week.
I'm also sorry. I love that someone put here romance equals capitalist courtship.
That was Jared.
in a marketable context, because my romance ain't got nothing to do with capitalism.
Okay, because I'm too broke to. But yeah, so Zakkiyyah will be doing a MOCA.IG takeover. So you will be able to get more into her work for the next week. So starting tomorrow until next Sunday, or until this coming Sunday. So get into her work. I know that you will be well, I know you're going to share some work. I'm just excited and honored to host you on MOCA.IG for the next week. I can't wait to get more opportunities to share not only your work, but work with other amazing Black queer artists, Black femme artists, Black artists as a whole. I do plan on doing some programming via MOCA.IG and in real life this coming summer. If Miss COVID is still here, it will just be on MOCA.IG. If Miss COVID is gone, it'll be on both. So with that being said, peace and blessings. All that other good stuff.
No, peace and blessings to you. I actually, aside from this quarantine and the very harsh reality that people are dying and losing loved ones, I do want to say that with all the chaos that's happening, you know, on the outside and within my own family, I just feel very blessed. I just feel very grateful. And that's kind of the space that I've been in for some time.
Yeah, same.
Quarantine has definitely humbled your girl.
Look, you see everybody's head? Look, do you see this? I done ran out of hair care products. I can't even go to CVS to buy stuff.
And thank you for having me on here. It's been nice to have this conversation, and to engage with you and to engage with other people. And I put my face on for y'all today.
Yes, come on.
We ain't got nowhere to
go. Okay, and lastly, can you tell people where, like, how they can find you on what social media and your website?
I would say just I have a link that will direct to my website on my Instagram. Or if you just type in ZakkiyahNajeebah.com, you can find more about my work. I will be uploading more recent work on there soon. And then once I get proper documentation, because that's important, of some of my other works, I'll be uploading those as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. You have a nice night.
Thanks for everybody that tuned in.
Peace. There will also be more artist talks in the coming future. All right.
Yes, I'm excited.
Yeah, same. All right, see you later.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for sticking through for this last hour. I appreciate you. Again, Zakkiyyah will be doing a takeover this week, and then I will start doing more takeovers. As you all may know, MOCA.IG started in 2017 after I finished grad school, and it was a response to institutions pretty much telling me I did not have enough experience to work in them in a curatorial way. Also, after being informed that I was too young to work at one space, and they asked me to be a janitor. Whole nother conversation. So yeah. Peace, blessings, stay healthy, stay safe. If the sunlight comes out, stick your head out to get that sun. All right, peace.